Hi, I'm Chinlu.
And I'm Sal, and this is our next make.
This year we experimented with growing potatoes in bags on our deck. As you can see, the sweet potatoes are still going strong, but the potatoes should have been harvested well over a month ago.
I suppose we could just start digging for the potatoes, or we could dump the bags out onto a tarp and dig through the pile, but let's make a few projects to help with the harvest. The first thing I want to make is a soil sifter. It's a simple frame made out of 2x2s to which we'll attach this hardware cloth. I'll take a few measurements and then cut everything to length. Anytime you're building a frame like this, or any other project like a drawer or a box, that you want to make sure you have 90-degree corners, you can either use an appropriately sized square or measure the diagonals. What you'll usually find is that one of your diagonals is longer than the other, and our goal is to make them equal. So what I like to do is put my hands in the direction of the longer dimension and then just squish them together. And then what that does is lets me know that the top in this case needs to move left or the bottom needs to move right. So now the question is, how far left or right should these parts move? And what I like to do is take the difference between the two diagonals and cut that in half. So I was out by about 1/2 inch. So if I just move this over to the left 1/4 inch and retake my measurements, I'm gonna find them pretty close to square. And you can adjust again from there.
Now we can pre-drill and drive in a few 2.5-inch exterior grade screws. Then we can attach the hardware cloth to the frame using galvanized poultry net staples. We double up one of the short edges of the frame so it can register along the back of the wheelbarrow. And then we mark a few angled pieces along the front that will help keep the frame centered when it's in use.
It's easy to cut most angles that a project needs at the miter saw, but when you have extremely acute angles like this, it can be dangerous if you don't use a jig. So for this cut, I just freehand it with a circular saw and then get ready to screw the pieces in place. Pre-drilling here is really important since we're so close to the end of these small pieces.
Now that our sifter's done, let's build a basket and collect our bounty.
For this project, I want to take advantage of the leftover pieces of 1/2-inch white oak that we have from our hook and ring game, as well as this piece of wire mesh from our chicken coop build. We'll take some measurements and let those dimensions dictate the overall size of our harvest basket. With those dimensions in mind, I start laying out my idea in XDesign, a browser-based CAD tool from SOLIDWORKS. Now you can certainly make a simple project like this without CAD, but I find that it's exactly simple projects like this that are perfect for honing your CAD skills, especially if you're just getting started. You only need basic commands to model your idea, but then you get the benefit of digitally experimenting until you land on the perfect design. You can also figure out how much material you'll need to make a project, which is great in our case because we only have a limited amount on hand. To make the sides of the basket, we need to glue up 2 panels, so I'm cutting this long board down into smaller lengths. When you're gluing up panels, it's important to make sure that the 2 adjoining faces are extremely flat. Not only will that create a strong glue joint, but it'll also make the seam disappear. I'm going to do this over at the jointer, but you can also do this at a router table or right here at the table saw with a good sharp blade. Let me show you how. I'm going to start by trying to identify which side of this board is straighter. I'm going to place it right up against the table saw and inspect the edge. I can see that it's rough, but it's fairly straight. If I flip it over though, I can see that this side is both rough and a bit curved at the ends. You can see how there's about a 1/16 of an inch gap. So this first side is the straighter side. I'm going to use that up against my rip fence to make my first cut. This will straighten that curved edge and produce one smooth side. Then I can nudge the rip fence over just a bit, flip the board around, and cut the other side. For relatively short boards, this technique should result in straight and flat faces for your glue up. Since this project will be used outdoors, I spread an even coat of Titebond 3 across the boards, and then apply even clamping pressure until I see a small amount of uniform squeeze out.
With the panels dry, I sand them to remove any residual glue, and then we start to draw out parts of our design. Sal lays out the handle while I work on the side pieces. In other projects, you've seen us print out 1-to-1 drawings of a design and glue it to the wood, or use CNC to cut things. But sometimes we just love to go through the process of hand drawing the parts. It's fun to use a combination square to draw angles and to use found objects to draw arcs. We clamp the handle to a table and carefully cut to our lines with a jigsaw. And to cut the side pieces, we first clamp them together and then cut them at the same time.
To make the handle a bit more comfortable, we create a full roundover on each side by running the piece through a 1/4 inch radius bit on our mini router table. We use a smaller 1/8 inch radius bit to ease all the edges of the other parts. Then we cut the slots in the side pieces that will receive the handle. It's a simple matter of drilling 1/2-inch holes at the top and the bottom of the slot, and then cutting the sides with the jigsaw. We're almost ready for assembly, but first we drill a few holes for the dowels that we'll use to hold everything together. There are 2 at the bottom for the crosspiece, and 1 angled through the side at the top to pin the handle in place.
We temporarily clamp everything together, and then use the pre-drilled holes to drill matching ones in the crosspiece and the handle. Then we glue things together with more Titebond 3. We'll often run our dowels long and flush trim them after the glue dries. But for this project, we're going for more of a rustic look here. We intentionally drill slightly deeper holes and then just hammer the dowels flush. It's a small detail that adds just a bit of character.
As we often do with white oak projects that will spend time outside, we're finishing this basket with a coat of boiled linseed oil. You just wipe it on, let it soak for 5 minutes, and then wipe off the excess.
The last step is to attach the mesh to the basket. After cutting it to size, we pre-bend it to shape with the help of a piece of PVC pipe. This makes screwing it in place much easier. We drew a few layout lines on the bottom using the handy pocket tool that we designed, and then start to attach the mesh with these little metal clips. We found them in the electrical aisle of the home center, and they worked out great for this application. We just pre-drilled and then drove in the screws. Some of the spots were a bit tricky and made us nervous that we might destroy the project. But pre-drilling with the right diameter bit and having 2 sets of hands helped things come together great. We're super pleased with the results.
Okay, now for the really fun part, time to harvest the potatoes. I have to tell you, this was a blast. The sifter worked great, and every time we found another potato, we felt like kids again. It was like finding buried treasure.
I'm so glad we made this basket big enough because we have a lot more bags to empty.
Yeah, and I love that this project was so customizable. You could make it any size, and I think we picked just the right size for our needs. I'm looking forward to it being a perfect addition to our garden every year.
So we hope these projects inspired you to do something useful in your garden for this harvest season. Thank you for watching.
We'll see you on our next make.